I'm going to give you some tips on how to write your cisgender characters as great allies to their transgender friends, or just as characters that your transgender readers will like. This video is aimed at cisgender authors who want to include transgender characters or trans allies in their works. Although a lot of this also applies to just how to generally be a good trans ally, so let's get started. The most important thing, the first thing that I want to say is never let your character misgender or use the wrong name for a transgender character. And I mean not ever, not even if the trans character in your book is your character's arch nemesis. Do not ever let your character misgender them. Ever. And this also includes even if the trans character isn't even there. The thing is, when someone has just come out as transgender, it can be difficult to adjust to a new name and a new pronoun. This is natural, we understand this, even though we don't like it. And so in the beginning, if your transgender character has just come out, it is okay to have your cisgender character's inner monologue go something like he, and then moving on. As long as they get to the right pronoun, don't complain about it being difficult, and feel bad about not getting it right in the first place. So it's okay to do this, but do not do it for very long. In fact, I would say if you have to do it, let it happen once, maybe twice, and then just stop. Let your character have the right pronoun and the right name immediately after that. That is not usually how quickly that goes, but we don't need to see your cisgender character angsting about getting it right, because that makes it all about how difficult this transition is for your cis character and ignores all the difficulties that the trans character is having. So understandable, you can let it happen a couple of times if you want to for, realism's sake, but don't let it go on forever because that's just not helpful. Beyond this, you should probably consider what kind of support is appropriate in which situations. Say your cis character has a transgender friend. Say someone says something mean about their transgender friend or is being transphobic in some way. Do not immediately have your cis character jump in to defend them the first thing they do, because this takes away the agency for the trans character and makes them seem like a helpless victim that always needs someone else to be there for them. Consider maybe having some sort of system, or at least just having your cis character know the trans character so well that they know what type of support they need in what type of situation. And to give you some ideas, the support that they might need, it could be having the other person, the cis person, come in and defend them. Either because your trans character is not very confrontational, or because they're just exhausted from all of the other times that this has happened, so they can't do it themselves, or they need to step back and breathe, and your cis character can sort of draw the fire a bit to give your trans character a chance to rest. So I'm not saying that that is something that your cis character should never ever do, but there are other things they could do, and that could just be standing behind your trans character and nodding and agreeing with whatever the trans character is saying to defend themselves. Or it could sometimes be neither of the characters taking the confrontation. That is sometimes the best option. And that could be the best option either because the situation is dangerous or because the trans character just wants to leave as soon as possible and then afterwards go on a rant about how annoying that is, and then your cis character can just be there and nod and agree and just support them after the fact, I guess. And again, you can decide which type of support is the best in which kind of situation, and it'll depend a lot on the story you're writing, the situations they're in, and the personalities of your characters, if they are confrontational or not, and a whole lot of other things. And it's also possible that your trans character wants the cis character to always react in one specific way, but if that is the case, make sure that the cis character actually knows that for sure, that the trans character has made a blanket statement saying that this is what I want you to always do. Now, I said before that your cis character should always be supportive of the trans character, always use the correct name and the correct pronoun, even if the trans character is not present. And that goes for support as well, and support becomes a little bit different if the trans character is not there and can defend themselves. Then we would prefer, generally, to see your cis character taking a stance, and if someone is saying transphobic things, that your cis character actually protests, actually says something about that is not okay, stop saying that. And of course, this is either if the mean person is saying transphobic things about a specific trans person, or just about trans people in general. So your cis character should be there correcting pronouns and defending trans people's rights to be who they are, unless there is a specific reason that they cannot do that, either if they're not confrontational themselves or if the situation is dangerous. We do understand that sometimes it's better to just let the violent drunk rant about whatever he wants and not step in. But as long as your cis character at least acknowledges that that is not okay and I wish I could say something about it, that's at least a huge step in the right direction. This next part can be a little bit difficult, but it's about why your cis person is defending trans people. Basically, make sure that your cis character stands up for transgender characters' rights for the transgender people and not for themselves. They don't argue with transphobes because they want to be seen as a good ally. They do it because they are a good ally and honestly want to defend trans people and help to make the world a better place for trans people in general, or one trans person in particular. Preferably both. Preferably not just this trans person, but I don't care about the others because that's also not a great allyship at all. Hi, it's Editing Me here. I lost some footage around here, but the transition now is supposed to be that because the allyship doesn't center around your cis character wanting to be seen as a good person, but rather them acknowledging how tough life can be for transgender people, make sure that your character's inner monologue reflects this. To take an example, your character's dad has misgendered their transgender friend for the billionth time, and your character corrects him for the billionth time. And your character thinks something along the line of, oh, this is so annoying, why can he just never get it right? Don't stop there, because that makes it all about your cis character. It makes it annoying for them. Why do I have to keep doing this over and over again? At the very least, add something along the lines of, and I only have to do this with my dad. Imagine how difficult it is for my trans friend who has to do this all the time. Or, at least now that I've corrected my dad, maybe he will use the right pronoun when my friend comes over, so that this house will continue to be a safe space for them. I hope you see the difference there. If you don't, let me know and I will try to explain myself further. Sort of related to this, and also very important, is don't have your cis character dwell on the past. And what I mean is, don't have them think things like, oh, I missed the time when we would go skinny dipping in the ocean with all of our friends, but now that X has come out as trans, he doesn't want to do that anymore. Because that makes the trans character's transition a problem for the cis person once again. And we don't want this. This can actually be very, very harmful. To take an example, when I came out, I was for a long time worried that I had hurt my mother by robbing her of the illusion that she had a daughter and not just another son. She already had a bunch of those. She doesn't have any daughters. So if I were to read a line like that in a novel, things along the lines of, oh, I miss back when this person was a girl, that would have lent validity to those fears that I had, and that would have been harmful for me. So instead, try to have your characters focus on the positives of the now. Either the positives of a girlfriend suddenly being a guy friend, or vice versa, or at the very least focus on how much happier the trans character is now compared to before they came out. And I'm not saying your characters can't think about the past and think about the differences between the past and now. Just make sure that the past isn't, oh, I miss it so much, I wish we were still there. I mean, basically, if it sounds too difficult, just start by focusing on getting the pronouns right, getting the names right, and just supporting the trans character being who they are. Basically, just not questioning them. Not asking, well, how do you know? Or are you sure you're not just gay? Or anything like that. Just accept who they are. And again, exactly how you do this will depend on your characters and your stories, and a bunch of other factors, but hopefully keeping in mind the things I've mentioned in this video will help you make that choice. And if you think this sounds like a lot of work, if it sounds like a lot of work to write a trans ally in a society where it's not a given that you are a trans ally, the next video is going to be about creating a society that is more trans inclusive. Now, I'm not saying that that's easier, but don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss that one, because it's going to be a very, very interesting video. Thank you for watching, thank you for being a good ally, be safe, and I will see you next time.